White woman takes black CEO's seat, then discovers she owns the entire airline. The office was alive with the hum of activity, bustling with staff moving between tasks, the clattering of keyboards filling the air. Jamila Moore, the CEO of one of the largest airlines in the world, stood by her window, surveying the airport's sprawling expanse below. From where she stood, the terminals and airplanes seemed almost like a personal creation, a legacy she had spent years building. But today, things felt different. Her usually confident stance was betrayed by the underlying tension in her posture. She had just received an alarming message from her assistant, Karen Andrews. Something was wrong. As the morning unfolded, the whispers of corporate maneuvering began to reveal themselves, and Jamila couldn't help but feel the impending storm. Meanwhile, Karen, fresh into her assistant role, couldn't have known that today would change her life forever. She was about to step into a world of power she never imagined, one shaped by forces that stretched far beyond her control. In this tangled web, Karen was about to discover that the chair she was about to sit in was not just a symbol of power. It would be a seat taken from someone who had worked her whole life to get there. Karen had started working at the airline just a few months ago, slowly climbing the corporate ladder. She had done her job well, staying out of the spotlight, never seeking the attention that came with high office politics. But that all changed when she was unexpectedly promoted. She had assumed the role of personal assistant to Jamila, but soon things took a sharp turn. The senior leadership board, known for its quiet but sharp backdoor deals, had made an unexpected decision. Jamila had always been a respected leader, admired for her sharp mind and business acumen. But the moment Karen entered the picture, things began to shift in subtle ways. It wasn't just that she was good at her job, it was her race, or more accurately, her skin color, that became the unspoken asset that seemed to earn her favor among those at the top. Slowly, Karen was being moved into positions of more responsibility, filling gaps that Jamila was too busy to manage. Still, Karen had no idea what this truly meant for her future until the fateful day she stepped into the CEO's office without warning. The day she was promoted to CEO seemed like a dream to Karen. She had worked hard for her position, and though she never expected to rise this high, it felt like the moment had finally come. But as Karen sat behind the desk that belonged to Jamila, she couldn't help but feel the unease settle in her chest. The large office that was once a symbol of power to Jamila now felt almost too grand for someone like Karen. She was a white woman, young and inexperienced in comparison to the seasoned leadership of Jamila. Yet here she was, the new face at the helm of an empire built by someone who had faced countless struggles to get there. It wasn't just the grandeur of the office that felt out of place. It was the history behind it. The racial dynamics she had long ignored were now smacking her in the face, undeniable. Karen sat in the plush leather chair, staring at the papers on the desk, the weight of the decision she'd made pressing down on her. She knew something wasn't right, but she couldn't yet put her finger on it. She had the power now, but it felt hollow. She was being given the position, but for all the wrong reasons. As Karen began to settle into her role, the truth began to reveal itself. The power she had assumed was hers was, in fact, handed to her as part of a larger plan, one engineered by the board of directors. Jamila's position, once a place of authority and influence, had been quietly undermined. Karen soon discovered a series of documents, buried deep within the company's private files, revealing something far more sinister than she had anticipated. She wasn't the first person in line for the job. Jamila, despite her obvious talents, had been overlooked, her abilities seen as irrelevant in the face of a broader corporate agenda. Karen's promotion wasn't based on merit or potential. It was a strategic move by the board to replace a strong black leader with someone who could easily be manipulated. This discovery left Karen unsettled, but it also stirred something within her. How much of her promotion was truly her accomplishment, and how much of it was based on a deeper, racially motivated decision? The lines between right and wrong blurred as she faced the realization that her rise was part of a game she wasn't entirely willing to play. Meanwhile, Jamila was starting to put the pieces together. She had been a part of the corporate world long enough to know when something was amiss. Her initial confidence had given way to suspicion, and soon the walls she had carefully built were closing in on her. The whispers of the board's plans were growing louder, and she knew she had to act quickly if she wanted to save everything she had worked for. The slow, insidious way they had worked against her, undermining her authority in subtle ways, had finally come to a head. Jamila wasn't just fighting for her job. She was fighting against a system that had always looked at her as an outsider, despite her brilliance. Karen was merely a pawn in a much larger scheme. Jamila knew she had to expose the truth, not just to reclaim her position, but to remind everyone of the power of persistence in the face of systemic injustice. With each step she took toward the boardroom, the anger inside her grew. She wasn't going to let them steal what was rightfully hers, not without a fight. But little did she know the fight was far from over. Karen, too, had decisions to make, decisions that would determine not just her career, but the legacy of the company. As the days passed, the tension between Jamila and the board reached a boiling point. The corporate office, once a place of respectful negotiation, now felt like a battlefield. Jamila's confrontation with the board was inevitable. She knew that even if she could reclaim her position, there was something far more significant at play. The corporate world wasn't built to serve women like her. It wasn't built to serve anyone who didn't fit a very specific mold. The betrayal she felt wasn't just personal, it was systemic. And yet there was an unexpected turn of events. Karen, struggling with guilt and doubt, began to see the cracks in the system. She could no longer deny that her rise had been engineered. The moment she had taken the CEO's chair, she had become complicit in something far larger than her career. She had been given the keys to a kingdom, but it wasn't hers to rule. Her conscience began to weigh heavily as she realized the racial injustice at the heart of the decision. Karen was no longer just an outsider to the world Jamila had built. She was part of a system that kept people like Jamila from ever having a fair chance. In a shocking moment of clarity, Karen made a decision that would forever alter her life. As Jamila stormed into the boardroom prepared to reclaim her seat, Karen walked up to her with an apology. She stepped away from the power that had been handed to her, acknowledging that the system was broken and she could no longer play a role in it. Her resignation was both a personal and public statement. She would no longer be a part of a corporate machine that perpetuated inequality. Jamila, though no longer CEO, gained something far more precious than a title. She had earned respect, a hard-fought victory in a world that had long tried to silence her. The story ended with both women standing on opposite sides of the corporate war, but with a shared understanding of the true meaning of power. The systems that kept people like Jamila from rising had been exposed, but the real challenge was just beginning. And the question hung in the air, unanswered. How will you, and those around you, dismantle the systems of injustice that persist?